Keystone 254 North Terrace. It's a significant development that's being proposed on North Terrace, just across from Adelaide University and behind Synagogue Place. I'm the chairman of the property trust of the Freemasons Hall Trust, and today I've got my consultant, or our consultant, Michael Baragwanath, who's actually not a Freemason. And what we thought we might do is actually run through some of the questions that we've been getting. So we've had a major announcement recently with Pelligra being announced as our joint venture partner. And there's been a huge amount of coverage about that, particularly from Save Our South Australian History as a Facebook group, the Adelaide set, the Advertiser 891, and also, of course, our members. So what we thought we might do today is run through some of those questions, answer your questions that we've been having online, and to keep you up to date with the building. So, Michael, if you'd like to quickly introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. So Michael Baragwanath, I'm the lead consultant on this project and do a bunch of other things around Adelaide. Always lived here, lived down south in McLaren Vale, and have had a lot of fun working on this particular project. So that's enough to me. Go to my LinkedIn profile if you're really interested.
And we put that in the link, I suppose. So one of the things that I keep getting asked is continually about what's actually going to be in the composition of the building. So what will the building be?
So this is a bit of a story, but we've always wanted to make sure it fits in with the other assets around it. And so, we asked initially, do we put student accommodation there? Do we put apartments there? And really what we've landed in is this is a community building in a community space trafficked by a lot of people. So we've looked at a public observatory because our state doesn't have one. They're really well attended in states that do. We think it's a really great thing to have. So that'll be at the very top. Then we see there's a lot of new hotels in the city, but there's still not enough. And with all these great events happening at the moment and more to continue, we want more places for people to stay. So a hotel. What we'd really, really love, and is difficult thing to throw on the government and ask for, but is AMoSAH, an Adelaide Museum of South Australia's History. We think that would just be the most amazing cultural centrepiece to bring together, a lot of stories that we don't tell and a lot of things that we should be really proud about in our state. And that's what we'd love to see there. If we can't, we've got alternative plans, but that would be the coolest.
Right. So public viewing platform, hotel, history museum.
That's it.
Great. You'll go.
And you guys.
Oh, and us.
Cool. So some of the other questions we had. I reckon one of the main ones that comes up is why not keep the hall? Why couldn't we keep the hall?
Yeah. So one of the, so initially when we went into the hall, so the Great Hall sits out the back of the front tower. So essentially the building is like a T shape. We've actually got a little model here. So this front tower is a significant, it's almost 10 stories high. It's massive. And out the back, we actually have a Great Hall. Now, personally, this hall is, to me, beautiful. It's actually an excellent space, and it actually means, I suppose in the history and context of Freemasonry in South Australia, it's actually played a role there. So initially when we engaged architects and they walked into that hall, they thought it was absolutely beautiful. And everybody on the team thought so as well. So we've looked at every single option that we could possibly do to keep that hall, which includes building over the top of it, putting pylons through the floor, and also, I suppose, moving it or deconstructing it and reconstructing it. And the economic cost and reality of just doing that is just completely unviable. And we've done an extensive amount of work to do that, particularly with our engineers and our architects. And it would basically mean that it would not be possible. And as you said, Michael, it would basically turn the back hall into a Frankenstein of a space where it was this like large columns essentially piercing what would be a historic site. So maybe, Michael, you can answer what we're proposing to do instead in that space.
Yeah, so that's right. Basically what we found is we'd end up butchering this beautiful space. So the alternative is that we can't afford to maintain the main building. And that's probably, I guess, the story that started us on this journey, that for the last 30 years, the members have known that it just doesn't make enough money to pay its own way. The amount of rental space income you can get from the building doesn't anywhere near make enough to maintain it properly. And that's why it just keeps getting, worse and worse over time. And these ideas of, which we did really put a lot of thought into how we'd keep it, just ended up with this Frankenstein thing of pillars piercing it, and just it looked worse. So the new space is designed to be this really beautiful open hall, 27 meters high, actually higher than the current ceiling, with some really nice touches that sort of remember the past of the hall. There was some speculation the hall was built second. It was always built as one building, a hall and the lodge at the front. And the whole purpose of that hall was to make money for the membership. That's what they made it for. It's not fulfilling its primary purpose, which is make money. So we're going to replace it with this massive thing to make money. And that's essentially the idea. But We also looked at whether we put a car park ramped up and over the top of the building, and yeah, they end up just looking way worse than building something really ornate, really high quality, a beautiful open space that the public can enjoy, that has a really subtle lobby that takes you straight up to the top of the building. So that's basically the idea. That's why. Really.
Great. So actually another question, I'll throw another one to you. A question I get all the time is, we're just keeping the front facade, so just the front wall. Is that right?
No. So this is actually really handy having this model here, right? So that hall at the back represents about 10% of the building. 90% of the building is this tower at the front, and that's all being kept, and not just kept, that's being restored. So a few years ago, the mezzanine level was sort of converted to more modern office space. We want to bring that back to 1927 glory. Level 2, I think, was converted into a modern space. We want to bring that back to what it looked like in 1927 as best we can. So actually the plan is not just this sort of facade at the front, and no disrespect to people that do it. I kind of think it's like something out of, what is it? The movie.
Yeah.
Lamb, Silence of the Lambs. That's what it looks like. It's terrible. I don't like the idea of just keeping the face. I think we should invest in heritage and make sure we're actually using it and ensuring it's there to be enjoyed and kept. And this is really about keeping 90% of the building.
Absolutely. And you see that with so many buildings, particularly in Melbourne and other states, where they've kept this skeleton structure of the building, and that's absolutely the last thing we want to do.
Yeah. Look, it's one of those things where we've thought a lot about how we could keep it, and we've really focused on how we retain the heritage at the front rather than just the facade. We want to make sure that it's something people can enjoy and embrace, and we can restore back to its 1927 history. So that's the plan. Brilliant. What other questions do we have, Henry? Why not apartments? That comes up a fair bit. We've got a housing crisis at the moment. Why not just, put a bunch of apartments in there and sell them? Yeah,
actually, a lot of the questions have been, we should have more apartments and we don't need hotels. So the board, through our consultants, have done an extensive review of what the best possible location, the best possible mix for the proposed tower would be, and particularly giving consideration to actually where it's placed in Adelaide. So North Terrace is obviously a major boulevard. We also have it's a cultural precinct for Adelaide. And so what we're proposing here in terms of a history museum, a hotel, and a public viewing platform would be adding to that cultural boulevard and centre within the city of Adelaide. A lot of accommodation is generally in the southern side of the city, and that's a better place for it. And particularly when we start talking about car parking and also services to members of the community, the site which we're proposing in the current context and makeup of the building would be absolutely perfectly suited to these types of things. We've also had an extensive study into hotel space, and we've actually gone out to a global tender really as to what hotels would see and foresee for that site. And we've had a massive response and a huge positive response basically from all of the major hotel brands. We've now shortlisted that down to 4, and we'll be working with them to further refine that project.
Cool. What else could we add to that? So the other reason we didn't do apartments was because, and I think you started to say that there, Henry, the traffic management plan for apartments in that area would be horrendous. And actually, we did a lot of work with the Adelaide City Council as well as our consultants, just talking to them, because obviously council actually deal with this across all of the buildings. So it was pretty clear that the traffic management in that area would be really bad and a really bad experience for people that live there. But the other thing is that what the membership is looking for is ongoing income. They want to be able to generate income, use that to restore other buildings around the state, and then donate the benefit that they receive from this development, because there's only so much the membership actually need themselves. The challenge of apartments is you build them, you sell them, you have this large amount of cash again. What do you do now? We felt that creating an asset that generates an ongoing income stream was more in kind with what the membership were actually looking to do, and better use of that space in the area it's in. And this is where you can get a bit complicated, but essentially what we're trying to look at is what is the best thing for that site in that location, rather than looking at what problem do we need to solve at a state level. So we're just looking at the best possible thing for the membership and for the owners of this building and for the community that are in and around that site. So a lot of fun figuring that out, by the way.
So a lot of comments we're also getting is 33 floors. 33 floors isn't a skyscraper. And another thing, talking about why it needs to be so high.
Do you want me to answer that one?
Yep.
33 floors, because you told me to.
Yeah, I've been replying to the comments saying it's not a coincidence that it's 33 floors. So there's 33 degrees in Freemasonry. And it's not necessarily a tier system, actually. It's a number of different orders within Freemasonry. There's 3 basic craft levels, and then there's a number of different orders within Freemasonry. We can do additional degrees. They don't necessarily sit as a ladder or a elevation type point. They're almost standalone. But that's why it's 33 floors, and that was actually the instructions we gave.
We still don't know the real answer, but we got told 33 floors. So there's not necessarily going to be 33 floors. There might be 33-1, 33-2, 33,
might be
3 or 33 A, B, and C. But we do want to have a bit of fun with this. We want to make sure there's a bit of a journey. We want to make sure that, people know the history of the owners of the building, and that, they can have a bit of fun when they visit a site like this to go, well, why this and why that? And what's the little story there? And how can I learn a little bit more about it?
And so why so tall? Why not something a little bit smaller?
That's a really good question. So there's a couple of things that all interconnect with this. The first one is that it's actually a very complicated site, right? So when we look at, again, our beautiful little model here, when we take something out of the foundation here, there's a risk that we cause some sagging or some issues with the foundations of the old building. So we need to be absolutely sure that's not going to happen. Right, we're going to pour a lot of concrete underneath this to keep this building safe, right? Now that can end up being an unknown amount of money. We don't know how much it will cost to make sure that's done properly, right? We also have a water table, which is actually pretty easy to manage, but we've got to manage it. And we've got a hulking great electrical conduit that goes right alongside the building. And we've got to work really closely with SA Power Networks on how that gets managed.
There's a cable that goes under the building.
Yeah. So all of those complexities can erode profit, right? So you don't know exactly what they're going to cost. So the best thing you can do, as simple as this sounds, is make as much money as possible to cover up for the issues that might pop up. So if you built something that was, say, $15 million and was worth $20 million at the end, and the SA Power Networks come to you and say it's $5 million for your power cable to be moved, you're done. You're losing money on your apartments. So a big, tall building, while it sounds crazy, actually is safer for us to develop. So that's the first thing, economics and risk management. The second thing is... it's cool? No. It's because to make the observatory make sense, it needs to be at the top of the city. If we had an observatory that was great and on level 10, it's not that exciting.
You're looking up at the other buildings.
Yeah. So we want to make sure this is something really cool. And to be honest, because of that reverence for the public space that this building is, we wanted to make sure the top of the building was public space. That was something that everyone could come and enjoy. And so it really just makes sense to go up. We were really lucky. Other developers had put a lot of work into the legislation and the obligations we've got to the flight paths.
Oh, that's another question we get all the time.
Yeah.
A lot of people actually know about the flight path. So they'll be saying that we know that the height path limit is actually 160 and you can't go to 183 as you're proposing. I was like, how do you know this?
Yeah,
like a lot of people know this.
There's some smart people.
Yeah.
And so thankfully other people in the state have done that work for us and we were able to piggyback off of it. So thank you to the other developers that are trying to do other great things in our state. So Henry, one of the other questions that comes up is why not just donate this money? Like, it's going to cost a fortune to build this building. Why not just get the 300 million that you've got apparently and then donate it? Why not do that?
Yeah, great question. So a lot of people have this perception that the Freemasons, have $300 million in cash sitting in their bank accounts. We don't. Actually very open with how much we have. So we are actually a membership organization. We actually release those figures to our members every year. And for our charities, we're actually registered on the SENC. So you can actually go and pull up those files yourself. Now, so first of all, we don't have $300 million in cash that we can just contribute to something else. A lot of that will be coming from finance, generally through a bank. And we'll also need to think about that funding cap, or the stack, I should say. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that the building should be able to produce a significant amount of money. And the question is, what are we going to do with that money? And one of the reasons for the height in the building is that the obligations on the front tower are actually massive. So we need about, the last time we actually costed this and we actually engaged heritage architects and spent a significant amount of time evaluating what work would need to be done on the front tower. And that came in about $8 million a number of years ago. So it's likely to be much higher now. So first of all, the building actually needs to create about $10 million worth of profit or equity pretty quickly to be able to bring that front tower back up to its original state. And then secondly, we need to maintain that so we don't end up in the situation where we are now, where we're not really financially viable going forward. This next point is Freemasons actually have a huge number of heritage listed buildings in South Australia and the Northern Territory. And all of those buildings, which are heritage listed, are also suffering. They also have some of the same issues that we're now experiencing with 254 North Terrace. So the aim of the project is to be able to commit to restoring the front tower, to make sure that we can maintain it for the next 100 years, and third, actually maintain all of the other buildings that are state heritage listed. And there's one final point to that, and that's that Freemasonry between the years 2019 and 2022 donated $9.5 million to a number of South Australian charities. On average, it's about $2.5 million a year that the Freemasons donate to South Australian charities supporting various organisations like Life Education or UniSA with the Centre for Men's Health, or through CFS, for example.
That's Uni Adelaide, Centre for Mental Health. They'll get very annoyed if we say UniSA.
Apologies.
We've supported UniSA with other stuff, which is also cool. But
Thank you for the correction.
Definitely Uni Adelaide.
There you go, everyone. So about $2.5 million per year. So the additional income that we'll derive from this building, as a community organisation, we want to give that back to the community. So we will be looking to increase the donations that we give to our community at the moment from $2.5 million up to about $5 million a year.
Yeah. Simple answer, I think, is if we make money, we can give it away. If we don't have money, we can't give it away. And what we're looking to do is make as much as we possibly can so that we can invest it in the community.
Yeah.
That's basically the point, I think.
Yeah.
Not a common question from the public, but definitely one from the members would be why Pelligra? Why Ross Pelligra?
Oh, great.
Do you want to talk to a bit of that and then I'll answer as
well?
Yeah,
yeah. Let's tag team on that one. So we, through our consultants very early on, we actually went to the members and asked the members what they thought would be the appropriate structure and how we should deliver this building. Having a joint venture partner who has significant experience in development and building, and also with the experience and expertise with the team behind them, makes a lot of sense when you're doing this for the first time. I've never personally built a skyscraper before, and that we do actually have a significant amount of experience on the board of nominees, but no direct projects really where we've taken management of sites this large. So we did want to bring in a joint venture partner to add stability and expertise to the project to make sure that it kept to its timelines. The next question was who should be that joint venture partner? And we conducted a global search through Michael to find just the right partner for us. Now, Pelligra was identified quite early on as a family-owned business who invested back into their staffs, but also massively invested into their communities and supported their communities, particularly through sporting groups. And Pelligra absolutely understands the importance of building community through sport. And essentially my pitch is that Freemasonry is a little bit like sport, but for people who can't kick very well. And so Pelligra seemed to be a natural fit. And I think that Pelligra can see the benefits that Freemasonry bring to our community. And that's why we chose them in the end.
Yeah. And I think they've just been really helpful from the get-go, to be honest. So when we very first started looking at this, we wanted to make sure someone who was able to participate was interested. And actually that was one of the first things we did, was just went out to a couple of larger development groups and said, look, if we did something like this, is this something you participate in? And Ross, amongst many others, was quite keen and said, yep, look, that sort of thing would work in this area. We do like it. We are interested to know more. Ross Pelligra in particular, as just a human being, has been quite helpful, been sort of whenever he comes to Adelaide checking in, how are you guys going, anything I can help with. We've often sort of pushed back on that quite friendly because we said, well, we need to follow our process and not be too close with any partner too early on. My work has involved talking to partners in Dubai, in Saudi Arabia, in mainland China, in Hong Kong and in Malaysia. And the things that came out of that really was that Adelaide's a place that we all love, but not a lot of people know about. So when you say we would like to develop something in Adelaide, you've then got to explain where Adelaide is and why it's a good place to invest and why you should be involved. The benefit of Ross and a few others was that they're already here, they're already doing developments here, they understand it, which was a big tick. The next big tick is whether they actually have the capability to do things. There are a lot of partners that will run around and talk up a big game, but they don't actually have the capacity to execute. So that was our next big thing. And then the last thing was whether there was this cultural alignment. And Henry's spoken to that around sport, and it's been good to really see that sort of play out with, the 36ers and a few other things that they've done. But what we get from that family is, they've delivered 3 generations in a row. They're very much about their family and their community. And so there's this good like emotional alignment, if you like, as well as ticking the boxes from a financial perspective, which, with an organization like this, with a membership organization where we have to be really public, even this video in itself, you don't normally have someone talking about a project they're doing. We've had to be really public, and, having someone who's comfortable with that has worked well.
We've also seen them have and manage and be involved in successful joint ventures with local government and also Freemasons in Victoria.
Yeah.
So we know that they have a track record of working with, as a JV, with community groups.
Yeah. So not that interesting to most people online, but certainly our membership would want to know why we're picking these guys. So they've been a joy to work with so far, and the true test is when the building's finished, but looks good so far. So what else do we have here?
You can ask a nasty question if you want.
Nasty question. So this comes up a lot.
It does. Right?
So there's a lot of these assumptions that Freemasonry is some sort of occult or some sort of thing. And the Simpsons episode, had a really good, I find it was hilarious, and it gets referenced quite a lot online. But can you just talk about what is Freemasonry and why is Freemasonry want to have this building? Is it to control the city? What is happening?
Or the satanic, yeah. So a lot of the comments are saying, well, you do all these satanic rituals, things like that. And it's hilarious. And it's kind of hard. You don't know what to say to that. If, I accuse you of being a mongoose in a human suit, it's very difficult to give an honest and appropriate answer to that. So Freemasons actually are non-religious. We don't believe in any specific God. In the ceremonies that we do, we don't reference any type of particular God. The only requirement for being a Freemason is that, one, you're generally a good bloke, and two, that you believe in something greater than yourself. What that something greater than yourself is, it could be anything from a belief in the connection between individuals in the universe to, say, the God of the Bible or Allah. And we do actually have a number of faiths involved in Freemasonry. So once those two established principles have been accepted, we don't talk about religion or politics from then on. That's it. We actually ban it from discussion in our lodges because it can cause division. But the way that I have been explaining Freemasonry to a lot of people is that it's essentially a sporting organization without the sport bit. And a lot of men find that doing an activity jointly together, like sport or having a common focus, that's how we build rapport and bonds with each other, rather than, say, grabbing a coffee and talking about some of the issues that we might have with our own personal lives. Being able to focus on a common activity brings men together and allows them to develop friendships over a common goal. After we do our ceremonies, we normally go downstairs if there's a basement floor or something, and have a pizza and a beer, and chill out and have a chat about what's going on in our lives. But for me, that's what Freemasonry is, and it's about that journey of personal development.
Cool. So one of the other questions that comes up from this is, well, you said men a lot. Why are women excluded? What happens for women that want to join? And I think in the modern age, what does this mean when you say men are allowed, right? So are there any particular segments of the population that are not included, for example? How do you address those sorts of things?
So I might actually share a bit of a personal story that that this is probably the first time I've ever talked about it on any kind of interviews. So I was actually homeless at the age of 18, and 6 cop cars rocked up to my house, and I was essentially on the curb with my mum, and we needed to go into a refuge. So growing up, I had a father who very much looked after me and cared about me and put a lot of input into me, but there were a lot of things that I think that he could have done better. And so I didn't really necessarily have an amazing role model from a male perspective growing up. And I think that that's actually an experience that many people in South Australia and around the world also face. And if we look at some of the statistics around men are the perpetrators of domestic violence in 4 out of 5 cases. We are overrepresented in suicides, depression, victims of serious assault, incarcerations, homelessness, extreme poverty, mental health issues. Men suffer from these types of issues disproportionately within our community. So when I came to Adelaide, I actually joined the military for a period of 2 years. And that was really to get out of my mum's hair too. I suppose I felt like a little bit of a burden at the age of 18. But then I came down to Adelaide and I went off into the private sector, and I heard about Freemasonry, and it was actually just through Adelaide University. I was doing my tutors there, my tuition there. So I joined up with Freemasonry, and I met a group of educated men who essentially became role models for me, and they've had a significant amount of input into my life. And so as a young man of 18 with not necessarily the best role models in my life, it's essentially now an organization who's not going to judge you for some of the flaws that you might have, but essentially it's an organization that is focused on making good men better. And I've personally seen the benefits of that type of process. Now, when it comes to women, there's actually a female only lodge as well. So there are Freemasons who would be considered to be female, and that's called the Order of the Eastern Star. So if you're a female looking to join Freemasonry or get involved in that type of thing, I'd recommend that you reach out to the Order of the Eastern Star, and that would be aligned for you. But like I said before, Freemasonry very much is, for me, sport for men without that, and having a common a thing that we can do. That's how men normally bond, whether it's, you know, building the back fence with your father-in-law or something like that. That's how men develop a bond, and how we it's through teamwork, and it's through that mateship that we can then begin to open up.
I think you massively over answered that, but that was awesome.
Oh, sorry.
No, that was really cool. And it is a personal story, and I think everyone has a story like that. So yeah, wow, amazing answer. I reckon that's actually a really good place to stop, actually, because we've gone through the building, we've gone through why, how it got together, money, charities, membership. Is there anything else? I think that was most of the questions.
That's pretty much it. So what we'd like to do from now, so we're still going through the planning consent stage, and we haven't submitted our planning consents just yet. It will now go to our membership to vote on whether they proceed. So the board of nominees, who have been absolutely fantastic, and a highly qualified board who have been invested in this project for the last 3 years, will now be going to what's called a special communication to discuss with our members whether they would like to proceed. We need their consent first. We'll then also be submitting the planning consent approvals. And then I think we're also looking at holding a public consultation where we can engage a little bit further with our community so that you can have the opportunity to discuss it with us. Now, look, my name is Henry Davis. I am very easy to find. And if you want to send me an email, you absolutely can. And I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions about Freemasonry or about the building, and why we're doing what we're doing going forward, as is Michael.
Cool. Brilliant. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.